Welcome to today's video. Today I want to look at a game that I played 44 years ago. Many years ago. I was playing for a team that represented a town called Armonk in New York State in the Westchester Team League. This is a game that really contains a lot of the different chess tools, ideas to attack that we've talked about, or you may have heard about from our classes or seen in one of my previous videos online. But this is a game that looks at the importance of the center of the board, the importance of open lines, open files, looks at the knight especially, the good points of the knight, the bad points of the knight, and it looks at value. It shows you a real life example of why the knight is worth 3 points and the rook is worth 5 points of value. Why is it that the knight is worth less than the rook? Well, it shows both sides of that. Okay, a knight helps me win the game as white, and a knight helps my opponent lose the game as black. So let's get started. I had the white pieces, and I played d4. My opponent played knight to f6. I played c4. My opponent played g6. I played knight to c3, my opponent played d6. I played e4, my opponent played bishop to g7. This is a very common opening. Opening theory, the moves that have been determined by the best grandmasters have pretty much determined that these moves are the right moves in this opening system. This is called the King's Indian defense that black is playing here. And I played f3 again. This is part of the system, the series of moves that have been determined by the grandmasters to be the best moves. And notice both sides are getting their pieces out. My opponent's a little bit quicker with development than I was, but I'm going to be getting my pieces out shortly. We're both following the ABCs of chess, attacking the center with pawns. I have 3 pawns in the middle. My opponent, though, has a pawn here, which controls here and here. He's got his knight out. He's brought out his knight and his b. I'm bringing out my knight. I'm going to bring out my b shortly. So we're both following the ABCs of chess, but at the same time we're playing theoretical moves, moves that have been determined by the grandmasters to be the right moves. Okay, my opponent now castles, and I bring out to e3 my b. I'm going to castle queenside. I'm going to bring my queen to d2 and castle queenside. My opponent plays knight to e8 now. He's trying to open up a line to the middle of the board to stop me from playing e5. Now he's going to have 2 pieces on a pawn here, and on g7 he's going to have attacking the square bishop. So I can't really push my pawn too farther. And I play knight g to e2 here. Whoops, excuse me. A little bit out of order here. I played here. My opponent played, he played here first. Now I played knight and g to e2. Sorry about that. And now he pushed his pawn to the middle, get his share of the middle of the board with e5. If I take, of course, he takes back. Everything's even. But I want to get castled. I want to get my pieces off the back rank and get castled. Again, we're still following pretty much opening theory, the moves that have been determined to be the right moves at this point. My opponent varies. Now he plays knight to e8. Bring his knight back in. He's trying to open a line here. Maybe take a pawn, exchange some pieces. I think he wants to play f5 here is what he's trying to do. And I castle queenside. Get my king to safety to the side of the board. He's got his to the other side of the board. And this means one thing. He's going to try to attack me, and I'm going to try to attack him. When your king's castle on the opposite sides, it usually means that there's going to be some attacking of the king. It's going to be direct attacks on the kings. My opponent plays queen here, wants to get off the central file. He's expecting pawn takes pawn, maybe pawn takes pawn, which he couldn't do without losing his queen here, so he gets off the file. And I just played king 1, king safety. It's the only reason. Bring my king to the side of the board, protect my king. And he proceeds to attack the center with f5. So now the ABCs have been followed pretty much. He's got to bring out a couple more pieces. I still have something to bring out, but we're both attacking the center with pawns. We both castle. The game is starting to heat up a little bit, as they say. Now, I play bishop to h6 on a nice open diagonal here. My intent is to try to exchange bishops, maybe push my pawn to h4 and h5 and start attacking his king. Okay, he's going to try to eventually do the same thing, but I'm a little faster with my attack. So he plays f4, and now either must retreat back here or take off the board, his bishop. So I capture the bishop. He could capture with his king, chooses to capture with his knight, maybe move his knight to here eventually. Again, we're even. I take the pawn, he takes the pawn, and now I've got a nice open file for my queen here. Nice open line. He doesn't have anything developed yet on this side, so I judge that this might be a good time to try to exchange queens. Get his queen off, which is developed, and get my pieces really into play. So I play queen here, he takes, rook takes, must recapture, otherwise I don't get a queen down. I like my rook on the file. I'm going to move my knight to here and bring out my pieces off the back rank. I really have control of the open file. You want your rooks to be on open files like this, where there's nothing else on it. Okay, this is a good file for my rook. It captures a lot of squares, as they might say. He moves his knight to here. He wants to maybe go knight to here, knight to here. Knights on the rim are usually dim, so perhaps knight here was good too, but he's got another plan. He's going to further move his knight again, but this may not be so good. I move my knight to here. I'm going to play my knight either d3 or b3. I want to make a square to bring out as well from the back rank my b is 2 at the same time, quickly. He now plays knight to e8. Maybe a little bit of a slow move, attacking my rook. I think he wants to go to f6 maybe. I must move my rook out of the way. So I played rook back. Maybe rook here is good too, but I was looking at maybe putting both of my rooks on the file eventually, so I wanted to keep the square open. So I played rook to d2, getting my rook out of the way of being attacked from the knight. And he gets his final piece off the back rank, puts on e6, his b from the queen side. So we're both still working on getting our pieces out, developing, getting our pieces into the game a little bit more. And I bring mine to e2, and again I'm looking at maybe now playing my other rook to the d file, doubling rooks on the d file, and seizing control of this open file with my rooks. And again, rooks belong on open files. This is the center of the board. I've got some good control over the middle of the board here. Chess is played in the center of the board. It's another good example of that. Now he plays rook to f7 here at this point. I think I don't know what he was really trying to do here. This maybe knight to f6 was a little bit better move maybe. I don't know. I think he's trying to put both rooks here, but this was somewhat of a mystery to me. So I brought my other rook to the middle of the board, seizing firm control of the open file, the only open file, with my rooks. You want rooks on an open file like this. I have good control of the middle of the board as well, the center. Again, we're fighting over the open file. We're fighting over the center of the board. Material is even, but I've got a nice little spatial advantage here because I have the open file for both of my rooks. Plays his king to here. I think he's trying to again get his rooks somewhere, move his king here. I guess he wants to double his rooks maybe on this file when he can. It seems a little slow. So I played knight to here. Now attacking his unguarded e-pawn. Threat is simply knight captures the pawn. He doesn't want to lose a pawn here. Remember, every pawn is a potential queen. And we're going to look at that a little bit after in the same game. Now, this allows him to capture a pawn here, but I get to capture a pawn here. Because this move takes away the protection of my c-pawn from my e2 bishop here. But I'm attacking his unguarded e-pawn. So he captures my c-pawn. I capture his e-pawn. I'm now attacking two pieces here. He makes the best move. He must exchange bishops first, otherwise he's going to lose a piece. Now this would attack my rook. So he takes mine. Now I could take his rook, but he's going to take mine. This is probably about even. He'll recapture with the king. I'll recapture about even. I really don't want to give up the open file here for my rooks. So what I do is capture, instead of capturing the rook, I capture the bishop here with my knight. I allow him to move out of the way his rook, and he moves it here. He cannot put it here without losing it, obviously. Moves it here, attacking my knight. Now again, material is still even, 6 pawns aside, 2 knights aside, each side has 2 rooks, but my rooks are, I'm a little better developed. My rooks control the open file, and I have a potential protected passed pawn in the middle, protected by a pawn here. That may become a factor later. So I've got an advantage here. I've got a nice little advantage. I haven't won anything yet, but however I may. This is the start to where I can try to win something. So he attacks my knight. I move my knight out of the way. There are other moves. I could have played knight back to here. I could have played knight to here. I think that this is even knight into here, whatever that does. But I think knight to c4 is the correct move, not being attacked by anything. Now he plays g5 because I was attacking this pawn. So if I take this pawn, he captures my knight. I want to lose a knight for pawn. I move my knight out of the way. He guards his pawn. So everything is still even. Now I played knight to here, and again I have other possible moves here. I could play knight here, but he's going to exchange knights. I really don't want to exchange pieces at this point because his rooks are awkwardly placed. I have both of my rooks on the file, controlling the file. I have a good chance to win something here. Nothing quite yet, but I play my knight to d4, centralizing my knights. Notice both of my knights are in the middle of the game, or middle of the board, excuse me. And knights, you want to use your knights early. When the knights have squares to bounce around to and jump to with many pieces on the board, or at least enough pieces like we have still, knights, this is when knights are at their best, when they can move around the board, fork things, bounce around the squares. As the pieces start to get exchanged and come off the board, the less pieces on the board, the less useful the knights become, because it's a slow piece. It's a good piece when there's many pieces on the board because it can jump around from square to square. And our long-range pieces, like the rooks, bishops, and queens, can't often get open lines and open files when there's a lot of pieces on the board. But knights don't need open lines and open files. They can bounce around. So use your knights early when there's still a lot of pieces on the board, and try not to have your knights left when there's a few pieces on the board, because as we're going to see in this game, knights, the fewer the pieces are on the board, the less useful, the less good a knight becomes, because it's a slow piece. And we're going to look at that. We're going to look at why knights are worth 3 and rooks are worth 5 in this same game. Okay? So I played knight here, a good centralization, getting control of the middle of the board, getting my knights ready to start jumping the squares, and really maybe trying to win stuff. And his opponent's rooks are not connected, can't really do a whole lot at this point. So he moves his knight to here, g7. I think he's trying to exchange one off by playing knight into here. Okay, he's looking ahead. We're both looking ahead here. And now, looking ahead, I played knight to d6. Not really attacking anything yet, but I might try to play knight to here at some point. You know, there's various things here that I'm able to do. He's got to watch out for forks with the king and queen. Knights are very good forking pieces where I can attack a king and queen. So he's got to be careful here. I haven't won anything and he hasn't lost anything, but he's on the brink here. He's got to watch. He's got to really look ahead and think about what's going on and think about what I can do. He plays rook to d8. He's trying to get his other rook back into the game. Notice his knight, by the way, is still on the side of the board where it's not doing much. So he's attacking my unguarded knight here. I must either move it or guard it or do something about it. I have a lot of choices. I can move it back. I can move it to here. And I, in fact, move it to here. We're attacking his rook, attacking his knight. And now, of course, the obvious move is for him to capture the knights, try to get knights off the board. And this is what he does. He captures my knight on f5. Now, before you all say, okay, you're going to just recapture the knight back, Mr. B, right? Before I make that capture, I want you all to think about something. How we think all the time. We should think like this all the time when it's our move. We should look for checks and captures. Put on our computer eyes, look for checks and captures. Always look for checks first if you can. I know I may not have stressed that or may not have talked about that too much in my class. I just talk usually about captures and checks, but we should always look for a check first, okay? Checks are really more important than captures because a check can be checkmate. A check forces the opponent to do something to protect his king, to either capture something or move out of the way. But checks are actually more important than captures because they force the opponent to move, to do something with his king, okay? And knights, we know, are good forking pieces. They can attack two things at once. So instead of recapturing back, I had seen this position in my head ahead of time, and I knew what I wanted to do. Remembering how knights moved, I played knight into e6 check. Whoa, what's going on? I haven't recaptured the piece back, and now I'm placing another knight where it can be captured for nothing. However, what this knight move does is it opens up the file attacking his unguarded rook, where it's being attacked twice. It's not guarded at all. So he's in trouble here. Now, by looking ahead, he must capture, otherwise he's going to lose something. So he takes the knight. So I'm now 2 knights down temporarily, but the key is I now capture his rook with check, So I'm going to still have time to recapture the knight, the pawn. He plays king here, and I recapture his knight. So I now have a rook for a knight after this little combination that just, all I did to see this combination was, well, remember 2 things. To look ahead in my head and look for checks first. Look for checks and then the captures. So by not recapturing the knight, this surprised him. He did not think about the fact that I could play a check. He did not have his computer eyes on. He was not looking for all the checks and captures before he played the moves that he made, allowing me to play knight here. He did not look at this properly because he forgot to put on his computer eyes and look for the checks first. Okay, so knight take, rook take. He's got to move his rook out of the way or lose it. He plays, let's see, king f7. Excuse me. He played. Let's see, knight takes e6, rook takes e6, king to f7, e takes f5. He plays rook back here now. And now I'm up material here, okay? Even though pawns are even, I have a rook worth 5 for a knight worth 3. So I'm 2 points ahead. What I want to do is exchange his rooks, and I'll be down to rook versus knight, okay? When you're ahead of material, what you want to try to do is exchange pieces. And that's what I'm trying to do here. So let's see, I now played rook on 8 to d7. I could have played either rook here, it doesn't matter. And I'm just trying to exchange his rooks off. He plays knight here, I take his rook, and he of course recaptures king, takes knight. King takes rook, excuse me. So now I have a rook for a knight, although I have a pawn that I may not be able to hold. I'm ahead by 2 points, or 2 pawns if we say. But what does this really mean? What does this really mean in real life of playing the game? How much better is my rook than his knight? Now notice we've got very few pieces on the board now, and even though the knight won a material for me by a fork, and my knights were very good. His knight now, because there's very few pieces left, suddenly looks like a slow piece. It can't really move to a lot of squares. It can't do much, and my rook has the open file, has open lines. So let's jump ahead a little bit. This is a little longer game, but I want to show you what it means, why the rook is worth 5 and the knight is worth 3, especially once the game starts to exchange pieces, and the fewer the pieces on the board, the less good the knight is. The more pieces on the board, the better the knight was. Remember, there's still many pieces on the board when I was using my knights and jumping around. Now a knight, his knight especially, is not very good. So let's jump ahead and look at what happened in the game. Let's jump ahead about 10 or 12 moves, okay, and see what happens in the game at that point. Okay, so here we are. We've jumped ahead, 12 or 13 moves, and we've exchanged some pawns. Notice I have a passed pawn here. There's no pawns in the way blocking it. Okay, we each still have 3 pawns, but he's got a knight and I've got a rook. Now watch what happens in the rest of this game. Watch why the rook, because it can move to so many squares quicker than the knight can, is really much more valuable than the knight, especially when there's a few pieces on the board. So it's my turn here and I centralize my king. You're going to get your kings in the middle of the board. This is the end game phase now of chess. There's 3 phases. The opening, which is the start of the game. The middle game, which is most of the game, and this is where most of the action happens. Then the end game, where there's a few pieces on the board, and where the kings can become a fighting piece and move more towards the middle of the board, the center of the action. Remember, chess is always played in the middle of the board. So now, this allows my opponent to play knight takes pawn check. I'd seen this. He captures my pawn. Again, I play king to e4, attacking his knight, and he captures my other pawn. So this doesn't look good for me. I've lost 2 pawns in a row for nothing. But again, my rook can scoot around and captures his pawn here, attacking his knight. He's going to lose this pawn here. His knight is off to the side of the board again. He plays knight to g4, trying to get his knight back into the game. Okay, and I capture his pawn on an f4. So now we're each down to a pawn apiece. I have a rook and he has a knight. I'm attacking his knight, but I'm clearly winning here. Okay, as you're going to see, the rook, again, because of its ability to move to so many different squares quickly, and the knight, which now begins to look more and more awkward when it moves, it can only jump here, there, in various places, is a much slower piece. So fewer the pieces on the board, the less useful your knight becomes. So use your knights early, and don't expect to get too much out of your knights the longer they stay in the game and the fewer the pieces that are on the board. So king to f4, knight to g4, king takes pawn. He plays now, he's really only got one square for his knight. He can't move here without being captured by the rook. He can't move here without being captured by the rook. Can't move here without being captured by the king. Can't move here without being captured by the rook. So he's got 1 square knight to here. Now his knight, he's in danger of losing his knight because, again, the movements of the knight. The knight's movements are very limited. They can only move to a certain number of squares. They jump around, which is good when there's pieces on the board, but not good when there's very few pieces on the board. So I played rook to h6 check. He plays king to e7. I eliminate his last pawn, and now his king, remember, can't cross over. So all I have to do is push my pawn down, and I'm going to make a new queen. Then I'm going to have a queen and a rook. His knight, on the other hand, is getting trapped over here. So he's going to try his best to get his knight back in the game. He plays knight here, check, putting me in check. I played king to e4, and again now he's looking for squares to put his knight on. Can't move knight here without being. He can move knight here, but can't move knight here, can't move knight here, can't move knight here, can't move knight here. Knight back here isn't going to do anything, so he's got a very few number of squares that he can move to. So he plays king here, trying to attack my rook, forcing me to move back. I play rook back to c2. And again, now I'm cutting down the number of squares where his knight can move to. Now his knight can't move here. His knight can't move here. Knight can't move here. Knight can't move here. Knight can't move. He's got 1 square again. Knight moves here, and I could simply just march my pawn down, but I choose to just play rook here, trapping. I'm going to trap his knight once and for all. Okay. Knight again has no moves. It can't be guarded. He's going to lose his knight. He's going to end up just with a lone king, and I'm going to be able to quickly queen my pawn where I don't even need it. So notice again what happened in this game. Early on, my 2 knights in the middle of the board, the center of the board, were able to jump to many good centralized squares, and that's how I won a rook for a knight, by using my knights for a fork, looking for the checks first, putting on my computer eyes, looking for the checks first. But later in the game, when my opponent was left with the lone knight against the rook, the knight was almost useless because of the squares I can jump to. It's the reason the value of the knight is less than the value of the rook, because the rook can move to so many more squares faster than the knight can. The knights are made for early in the game use, middle game use, but not for later in the game. And your rooks are really made for use once the game starts to open up and you get some open files. The rooks are made for later use in the game because they need open files and open lines. The rook is a long-range piece, the knight is a short-range piece. I hope you all enjoyed this video lesson, and I hope you all remember that you want to use your knights early. Bring your knights off the back rank early, get them in the game early, because don't expect too much out of your knight. The longer the game goes along and the less pieces on the board. Use your knights early, not late. See you all next time.